The arrogant approach the Korthax Empire had conquered 17 star systems without breaking a sweat. Their crystalline ships, powered by harvested stellar cores, moved through space like predators through water. They had never met a species they couldn't subjugate, never found a defense they couldn't penetrate. That confidence would be their undoing. Commander Vexillar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominance, his forearms crossed behind his back as he studied the holographic display. The warning beacons floated there, ancient human satellites broadcasting the same message for the past 73 years. The text scrolled across the display in over 300 languages, but the meaning was always the same. Earth space is under permanent quarantine. Any vessel crossing the heliopause will be considered hostile. There will be no second warning. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Thrak, shifted nervously beside him. The Korthax were a proud species, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that changed color with emotion. Right now, Thrak's scales flickered between purple uncertainty and orange concern. Commander, the historical records show that 37 fleets have entered Earth space over the past 7 decades. None have returned. Vexillar's mandibles clicked in amusement. 37 fleets of inferior species, Thrak. The Zalathi were cowards who probably fled at the first sign of resistance. The Morven Collective relied on outdated plasma technology. And the others? Barely worth mentioning. We are Korthax. We have weapons that can crack moons and shields that can withstand supernovas. The fleet consisted of 240 ships, each one a masterpiece of destruction. Fighter carriers housed thousands of drone swarms. Dreadnoughts bore cannons that fired concentrated dark matter. Science vessels carried enough firepower to sterilize entire planets, while simultaneously conducting research. It was not just a fleet. It was a statement of absolute supremacy. As they approached the boundary, the heliopause where solar wind met interstellar space, something strange appeared on their sensors. Or rather, nothing appeared. Beyond the invisible line, space itself seemed different, not empty, but quiet in a way that made their instruments confused. Stars were visible, but their light seemed muted. Radio waves entered, but never returned. It was as if reality itself had been edited. Full sensor sweep, Vexillar commanded. The results came back immediately and impossibly. According to their readings, the space beyond the heliopause didn't exist, not in the sense of being empty, but in the sense of being undefined. Their quantum scanners, capable of detecting subatomic particles from light years away, simply returned null values. Lieutenant Cree, the youngest officer on the bridge, spoke up hesitantly. Commander, our historical databases contain fragments of human culture from before their isolation. They called this type of phenomenon a reality blind spot. It's theoretical physics that shouldn't be possible. Nothing is impossible for a dying species trying to delay the inevitable. Vexillar responded. They're using some form of cloaking technology. Primitive but admirable. Send in the scout drones. 50 drones, each equipped with enough sensory equipment to map an entire asteroid field, crossed the heliopause. For exactly 3 seconds, they transmitted normal readings. Empty space, distant Sol burning steadily. The outer planets visible and unremarkable. Then the transmissions changed. Not stopped, changed. The drones began sending back data that made no sense. Temperature readings in Kelvin that were negative. Gravitational forces that pulled in 7 directions simultaneously. Timestamps that arrived before they were sent. Then the drones vanished. Not destroyed, not disabled, simply erased from existence as if they had never been built. Thrak's scales had turned deep violet, the color of genuine fear. Commander, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans clearly have defensive capabilities we don't understand. Defensive capabilities, Vexillar repeated mockingly. They're parlor tricks, Thrak. Illusions meant to frighten the weak-minded. Ready the vanguard. 20 ships will cross together. Whatever weapon they're using can't possibly affect multiple targets simultaneously. The vanguard consisted of their most advanced vessels, each one shielded with overlapping energy fields and armed with adaptive weaponry that could counter any known form of attack. As they crossed the heliopause, every ship in the main fleet watched through shared sensors. For 17 seconds, everything seemed normal. The vanguard reported clear space, no threats detected, all systems functional. Then Captain Yorick of the lead ship spoke, his voice oddly flat. Commander, we've found Earth. It's beautiful. The humans are welcoming us. They've been waiting. They want to share their knowledge. You should bring the entire fleet. Bring everyone. It's safe here. It's perfect here. The transmission continued, but something was wrong. Yorick kept speaking, but his words began to overlap, as if multiple versions of him were talking simultaneously. The other ships in the vanguard began transmitting the same message, word for word in perfect synchronization. 20 captains speaking as one voice, inviting the fleet forward, promising peace and prosperity and knowledge beyond imagination. Then the visual feeds activated, and the bridge of the eternal dominance fell silent. The vanguard ships were still there, visible on screen, but they were wrong. Their hulls had been restructured, transformed into geometric patterns that hurt to perceive. They moved without propulsion, sliding through space in directions that shouldn't exist, and in the windows of each ship, shadows moved that were distinctly not Korthax. "Cut the feed," Vexlar ordered, but it was too late. The transmission had infected their systems, not with a virus but with information that their computers couldn't process. Error messages appeared in languages that had never been programmed. Navigation systems began calculating routes through dimensions that their scientists insisted were purely theoretical. The main communication array activated without authorization, and a new voice spoke. Human male, tired. "Commander Vexlar of the Korthax Empire. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Collective. You were warned. You chose not to listen. Your vanguard is gone. They're not destroyed, they're translated. They exist now in a state between states, neither dead nor alive, neither here nor there. They'll broadcast forever, inviting others to join them. It's not cruel. They don't feel pain. They simply are what they've become." Vexlar's rage finally overcame his caution. "You dare threaten the Korthax Empire? We'll glass your entire system. You're welcome to try," Admiral Chen responded, and there was something in his voice that made even Vexlar pause. Not aggression, not fear, but a deep, profound exhaustion. "But first, let me show you something. Check your star charts." The navigation officer pulled up their galactic positioning system. For a moment, nothing seemed wrong. Then the discrepancies began to appear. According to their instruments, they were simultaneously in 3 different locations. The stars around them had subtly shifted, some burning brighter, others dimmer, and a few that shouldn't exist at all. "You're not where you think you are," Admiral Chen explained. "The moment you approached our heliopause, you entered a pocket of space we've separated from normal reality. You can see out, but what you're seeing isn't real. It's a projection of what you expect to see. Your empire, your reinforcements, your escape route. They're all illusions we're allowing you to perceive." The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers checked and rechecked their instruments. Communications tried desperately to reach the Empire, but every attempt to verify their position only added to the confusion. They were lost in a maze of their own perceptions. The Revelation Sub-Commander Thrak was the first to understand their true situation. His analytical mind, trained in the complexities of multidimensional warfare, recognized the patterns in the chaos. "Commander," he said quietly, his scales shifting to the gray of grim realization, "we're not in a trap. We're in a laboratory. They're studying us." As if responding to his words, the view screen flickered and changed. Instead of space, they saw Earth, but not the Earth from their historical records. This was something else entirely. The planet's surface was covered in geometric structures that defied conventional architecture, buildings that existed in more than 3 dimensions, their impossible angles creating optical illusions that made the crew's eyes water. Cities floated in the atmosphere, tethered to the ground by beams of solid light, and moving between these structures were the humans, except they weren't quite human anymore. Admiral Chen appeared on the screen, and now they could see him clearly. Half of his body was biological. The other half was something between machinery and pure energy, constantly shifting and adapting. Behind him stood others, each one modified in different ways. Some had additional limbs that phased in and out of visibility. Others had eyes that reflected scenes from different time periods. A few seemed to exist as multiple versions of themselves, all occupying the same space. 73 years ago, Admiral Chen began, humanity made a discovery. We found a signal from outside our universe, not from another galaxy, not from another dimension, but from outside the entire structure of reality as we understood it. The message was simple. You are being tested. Evolve or be recycled. He gestured, and the screen showed historical footage, real recordings from Earth's past, cities burning, populations fleeing, scientists working frantically in underground laboratories. We had 17 months before the test began. 17 months to transform our entire species from type 0.7 on the Kardashev scale to something that could survive judgment by entities we couldn't even comprehend. So we did the only thing we could. We chose evolution through any means necessary. The footage showed humans volunteering for experiments that would have been considered abominations by any civilized species. Consciousness transfers, genetic modifications that rewrote DNA in real time, quantum entanglement procedures that linked human minds across space and time. Failures were numerous and horrific, but successes were revolutionary. We passed the test, Admiral Chen continued, but the price was everything we were. We're not human anymore. Not in any way your empire would recognize. We exist partially in this dimension, partially in others. We perceive time as a navigable dimension. We can manipulate matter at the quantum level with thought alone, and we discovered something terrible in our transformation. The screen changed again, showing the galaxy from a perspective no Korthax had ever seen. It wasn't a map or a scan, but a living visualization of interconnected consciousness. Billions of species represented as nodes of thought and emotion. Every species that achieves interstellar travel faces the same test eventually. Most fail. They're recycled, their consciousness absorbed into the background radiation of the universe. Some pass but lose themselves in the process, becoming something unrecognizable. And a very few like us pass while retaining enough of their original nature to remember what they were. Vexlar found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. You're lying. This is psychological warfare. I wish it were, Admiral Chen replied, and the sadness in his voice was genuine. But you're here now, at our boundary, and that means your test is approaching. The entities that judge us all have taken notice of the Korthax Empire. You have perhaps 30 of your years before they arrive. Based on your current level of development, your chances of survival are approximately 0. The tactical officer suddenly shouted, Commander, the Vanguard ships, they're moving. On screen, the 20 transformed vessels had arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern. They began to pulse with light, and with each pulse, space around them rippled. The ripples reached the main fleet, and with each wave, the crew felt something fundamental inside them shift. Not their bodies, but their perception of reality itself. We're offering you a choice, Admiral Chen said. Leave now, return to your empire, and face extinction when your test comes. Or stay. Let us teach you what we've learned and perhaps survive as something new. But know this, the transformation cannot be undone. You'll keep your memories, your core personality, but everything else will change. You'll see reality as it truly is, not as your limited senses perceive it, and once you see it, you can never unsee it. Lieutenant Kree was the first to speak. How do we know this isn't an elaborate trap? That you're not simply trying to convert us into weapons for your own use? Chen laughed, a sound that echoed in frequencies that shouldn't exist. Lieutenant, if we wanted to use you as weapons, you'd already be converted. We don't need your consent for that. We're asking because we remember what it was like to face this choice. We remember the fear, the doubt, the desperate hope that there might be another way. There isn't. There never was. The screen shifted to show thousands of other ships floating in Earth space, all transformed like the Vanguard, all from different species. Every fleet that entered our space was given the same choice. Most chose transformation. A few chose to flee. Those who fled no longer exist. Their civilizations fell to the test one by one. We watched from here, unable to help, bound by rules we didn't make but must follow. Thrax studied the tactical readouts. Commander, our quantum signatures are destabilizing. If we remain here much longer, we won't be able to leave even if we wanted to. The space itself is changing us. That's the boundary effect, Chen explained. Reality is thinner here, more malleable. Your bodies are beginning to adapt naturally. It's a survival mechanism built into all consciousness. Stay long enough and the choice will be made for you. Vexlar stood from his command chair, his forearms spread wide. You claim to offer salvation, but what you're really offering is obliteration. The end of the Korthax as we know them. Yes, Chen agreed simply, just as we offered ourselves the end of humanity as we knew it. The question is, would you rather die as pure Korthax or live as something greater? The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing systems. Around them, reality continued to deteriorate, showing glimpses of impossible vistas, parallel dimensions where the laws of physics were suggestions rather than rules. In some, the crew saw versions of themselves that had already chosen, transformed beings of light and thought that looked back with recognition. I need proof, Vexlar demanded. Show me one of your transformed humans. Let me speak to them directly. Chen smiled and his form began to shift. The mechanical and energy components of his body expanded, revealing the full extent of his transformation. He existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. His consciousness spread across probability clouds that touched every possible version of himself. When he spoke again, it was with the voices of every human who had ever lived, a chorus of billions united in singular purpose. "We are humanity," they said. "We were farmers and soldiers, teachers and criminals, saints and sinners. We chose to survive at any cost, and the cost was everything. But we remember love. We remember fear. We remember hope. And we remember that survival alone isn't enough. That's why we warn others. That's why we offer the choice. Because in the end, the only thing worse than transformation is extinction." The effect lasted only seconds before Chen collapsed back into his singular form, but it was enough. The crew had seen the truth, the vast network of consciousness that humanity had become. It was beautiful and terrible, alien and familiar, everything they feared and everything they might aspire to be. "You have 6 hours to decide," Chen said, his voice returning to normal. "After that, the boundary effect will make the choice for you. If you choose to leave, we'll ensure you make it back to your empire safely. If you choose to stay, we'll guide you through the transformation. Either way, your war with Earth is over. We don't exist in a way that can be conquered, and you don't exist in a way that can conquer us." As the transmission ended, Vexillar looked around his bridge at his crew. Each face showed the same mixture of terror and wonder. They had come seeking conquest and found instead a mirror of their own future, a choice between death with dignity or life without limits. The stars outside their windows began to pulse in patterns that spelled out words in their own language. Choose wisely. Choose soon. Choose knowing that there is no going back. And in the silence that followed, as the Korthax Empire's greatest fleet floated at the edge of transformation, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what they would decide. The warnings had been real. The danger had been absolute, but so was the opportunity.